Welcome to Graduate Compass, the podcast for graduates who haven't quite figured out what their next step is going to be.
Sunita, as a starting point, let's give the people what they want to know. What did you start off studying and what are you doing now as a career?
Are we talking from GCSEs or are we talking from degree?
Well,
where are we starting?
It might be a long episode if we start from GCSE, so how about we go straight from degree?
Okay, so I studied a BSc with honours in science with education and qualified teacher status. It's a really long title and it just means that I did an undergraduate route to be a science teacher. So instead of doing a PGCE after doing a science degree, I did it a different way. So I had 3 years of pedagogy, which is like learning how to teach children. And then I did like the theory side, pretty much like going through like the framework, like GCSE A-level framework, and just becoming comfortable with it.
And what do you do now as a career?
I'm going to be starting a fast track NCTJ to be a multimedia journalist soon. So a complete change in career.
So I'm ignoring the fact that you have the creepy laugh because I wasn't sure if you were talking about your creepy laugh or my creepy laugh. So
my creepy laugh.
Oh, your creepy laugh. That's okay.
Yeah, because I was like.
Well, I've often been told my laugh sounds like a dying baby giraffe, so I try not to laugh on the podcast, so not to scare anyone who's listening. But on top of that, so you obviously went to university with that desire to be a teacher, and then somewhere along the line that changed. Where did it change, and how did you end up kind of moving away from that?
So I did the degree at Sheffield Hallam, and then in my last year, everyone was like practicing to do interviews, like teacher interviews and stuff, like mock interviews, and I had a desire that I wanted to go do a master's at Imperial in science communication. Because basically, during the course, I kind of found that my strengths were in like writing essays and like doing presentations, and so I decided that was what I was going to go do instead. So towards the end, I applied for the masters. I had an entry test to write an article and stuff, and then went to the interview, and I got a place, thankfully, which I wasn't expecting to get a place, to be honest. Partly because a lot of the people that I was studied with went to like Russell Group unis, like really top unis, and did like pure science degrees, and I was the only one there that came from a uni that wasn't maybe in the top 20 or something, and didn't do a regular science course. I did something a bit different, but I don't regret it. I'm really happy with that, with the route that I went, that I took. And then when I did the masters, we did a lot of different modules. So there was like communicating through writing, through doing like science documentaries, like practical radio. I did practical radio module and writing for journalism at the end of my last semester, and just decided that I really loved it after I had 2 placements. So I had 2 placements. One was with BBC Digital Planet on the World Service, and the other one was working on BBC The Truth About, which is a primetime BBC One like science documentary, and I worked on 3 of those. So the one was about the immune system, one was about getting fit at home, which is already aired last week, and the third one that I can't remember off the top of my head. But after that, so I got to produce a few radio packages for BBC Digital Planet, and just decided that I loved it and I wanted to continue as a career. But
before we focus on that, but I just want to rewind slightly, because your energy and your enthusiasm for media in general, let's say, it comes across. I know people listening can't see you right now, but you're bursting with energy talking about it. What I did notice is that there was no mention of teaching at all in your answer, and I do wonder, like, what was your desire to go and study teaching initially then? Because you seem to have kind of forgotten about it quite quickly to move on. So I'm just wondering, was there ever a love of teaching there?
So the weird thing is, originally I never really wanted to be a teacher. I wanted to go study optometry. I didn't get the grades, and optometry is just a course to be an optician. For those of you who don't know, it's a fancy word. And I used to work at quite a few opticians, I worked at Independence and I worked at Specsavers, and I loved it, and I wanted to go do that, and it didn't happen. But at the end, I realised that like I had a real strength for communicating and getting things across to people. So I did train to be a teacher, and I did enjoy it. And whilst I did the full-time masters in the first half of the year, so sort of before lockdown, I was a teacher, so I had to teach 3 days a week and do the masters 3 days a week. So I was doing like my newly qualified year and building teaching portfolio at the same time as doing a full-time masters, and I loved it. My kids were absolutely just mental, great personalities to work with, and I loved it. But the kind of the school politics and stuff weren't really for me, and I didn't really thrive in the environment that well. So it wasn't that I decided that I didn't want to teach because I didn't like children, or just thought, oh God, I hate this. I would return. If push comes to shove, I would return. I just know that my strengths lie elsewhere. It's not that, because I loved working with children, it was amazing, and I wouldn't have changed that experience for the world. But I also know that this is like a real passion and drive of mine is in media, so I want to try and follow it. And if it doesn't work out, then I've always got a great backup.
Sunita, so when you were doing your masters and you were kind of making the shift from the teaching world into the world of communication, what was it like when you were getting to work on some of the, I suppose, exciting projects that you mentioned previously?
So as part of my course, I had to have two different, I had to take a placement as part of the course, and towards the end, I found that I really enjoyed the practical radio module. So I did really well on that assignment, thankfully, and it was decided that I'd get a placement with BBC Digital Planet, which is on the World Service. And I'm going to be completely honest and say that I wasn't really a regular listener or anything like that. It wasn't, in technology, I can't say for sure it was a main interest of mine until I started working for BBC Digital Planet. But the placement was all done during lockdown, so everything was done through like Zoom meeting. I had like regular Zoom meetings with the science unit, and I had to work with potential contributors for the show and do a pre-interview with them. So that meant it was like a lot of researching who they are and researching their work. For example, if they had a recent book out, if they had a podcast, or what kind of like research papers they have, and scouring it all and getting the right questions to really bring them out of their shell and get them to talk to me properly. And then I would write that up into briefing notes that would be given to the presenter of the show for the actual interview. And it was great. I really enjoyed that placement and I learned a lot. So, but also I was given the opportunity to like pitch ideas to them. So I pitched 3 ideas to them and they took every single one of them, surprisingly, and I wasn't expecting it.
Are you finished your masters now? Are you
the masters finished last year, yeah.
Congratulations on that. What was it like graduating from that, and where did your head go next? Because we are going to talk in a few minutes about how you're involved in about 20 different projects, which is really impressive, and there's loads of stuff going on, and we'll talk about that in a second. But when you were finished, where was your head going of like what you wanted to focus on, and what was your priorities? Is probably my question that I've again asked in a really long-winded roundabout way.
Yeah. So once I finished the masters, during the masters and stuff, we were told like you'll make lots of connections with people and stuff, and it was strange because everything went online when the pandemic came along. It just didn't feel like we made those connections the same way that we would in person. So like trying to approach people maybe for work and stuff suddenly felt a whole lot more daunting than it would before, because I'm not the kind of person who maybe like shies away from like in-person interactions and stuff. So I'll have no qualms about like asking someone if they've got any work experience for me or an internship or whatever. So it was weird when it all went online and stuff, and the only thing I could do is maybe add them on LinkedIn and hope for the best, which it just isn't the same really. You see so many things that people that'll say online, like just send them a message on LinkedIn and open a conversation, like it's that easy when it comes to actually getting a job. So when I thought, and I was like, okay, like, what do I really want to do now? Like, what do I want to do? And I thought, I really love this radio thing, but the idea of going along with it without a proper training in journalism felt a little bit strange, because I can put a radio package together, and I've got the capacity to be able to work with the editing software and everything just fine. But when it came to like that storytelling element and having the groundwork to be able to do it properly, I didn't feel like I was quite there. I had 1 or 2 modules to talk me through the process, but they were very like fast, quick modules for a few weeks. And so I thought, okay, well, I'd quite like to study journalism, but I don't have the privilege to be able to go and shell out the money for another master's out of my own pocket. So the only other idea that I had was, right, I'll see if I can talk to my parents and potentially see if I can I'll see if I can get some work or something to fund the masters, and sorry, not the masters, fund the fast track course, and see if I can do that, because that was like half the price of doing a master's degree. It was like 5,000, whereas a master's would be another 10 grand, which I just don't have. So I found a course with PA Media and another one with News Associates, and I had both of the interviews, and yeah, I got a place on News Associates. But when I first came out of the masters, my first thought was, I'm going to need a job, and if I don't find a job that's not teaching, I'm going to end up in teaching again. So a lot of the people that I know have ended up in like communications or working for charities, but I thought, like, do I really want to compromise what I do again, like for a second time? Because I knew, if I try for a communications job, I've got a good chance of getting one. Yeah, I've come out with this master's from a decent university, a top university, which puts me ahead of a lot of candidates, some people would say. But then it's like, it felt like that choice between compromising what I want to do again, like going back to teaching or getting into communications, will be compromising what I really want to do. So I thought, no, I'm going to push to do what I actually want to do in life now.
Which is brilliant, and love to hear that. And I did reference before that you've been involved in so many, you are involved in so many different projects and different things and stuff going on. So do you want to tell us a little bit about some of the stuff you have coming up or that you're working on?
So at the moment, I work for a local online publication in Teesside called The Tees. So The Tees is like a collective of a few towns up in this part of the northeast, and I work as a community and digital editor for them. So it's a platform of volunteers, mostly volunteers, and we try to get people from the community who are voices that haven't been heard, people that haven't written before, and they come to somebody like me who helps them write their first article and gives them that choice to share their story, which I don't think that a lot of platforms do. There's that opportunity maybe from a lot of voluntary platforms to get the opportunity to get published, but there's not so much of an opportunity to get somebody who can walk you through that process of how to write an article properly, which I think that I'd like to think that I do for people, and I also am in the process of making a podcast for them, so it's going to be based around a lot of prominent issues with Matisse. So the first episode is about child food poverty, because we have almost a third of children who are on free school meals in this area. And the next one is potentially going to be about domestic violence, which has, unfortunately gone up during lockdown. The good part about this job as well is that I get to learn other skills that I didn't have originally. So one of them is editing proper video. And when I mean that I get to do things like editing video with appropriate subtitles for people with accessibility issues, which is it's extremely important. So it feels really good to be able to do something like that, and I love working for the platform. It's great knowing that I get to give people that chance and properly walk them through how to write an article properly or how to edit a bit of audio properly. It's fulfilling.
I've a couple of good questions, and it's so great because it's great to see you you obviously get so much enjoyment out of it. but it sounds like, and correct me if I'm wrong here, there was a big difference between studying the subject and then the kind of real life lived experience of having to kind of implement that in the work setting. What were some of the big takeaways you took from moving from the academic setting into a work setting?
Studying and learning theory is one thing, and working towards an assignment within this sort of bubble. So, for example, when I was writing articles for my Writing for Journalism module, or making packages for the radio module, that was one thing. I was in this little, like, comfortable little bubble where I can make mistakes and it's okay. Or, like, for example, if you need to get an extension, you can get an extension and there's no shame. But when it comes to the real world, that's so much different. Like, it's so much more different trying to get that time, trying to get the extra time, or trying, like, making a mistake and not feeling terribly bad about it. So, for example, when I did the Digital Planet, like, radio packages, I found that there was stuff, for example, like, I was working with a world audience, and certain words and stuff that I maybe could use with an audience with a British audience would not work for that world audience, and it just made me, when that happened, I just thought, like, when I was given that feedback, I thought, God, it's so much more different being part of a real working world. Same with the T's, it's different having to work in a team. I think that's so underrated. I think is having that experience of working with other people. And I think it's a real skill to be able to do that as well.
And I want to kind of focus on something as well that half touches on what you're talking about now, and half touches on something that you talked about a little while ago, because you are the first person we've had on the podcast who has to graduate in the middle of the pandemic. So you talked about the LinkedIn, the challenges in networking. Obviously, there's going to be challenges of working remotely or not working remotely, or things changing. How much did the pandemic affect your transition into the working world? It's a stupid question. It's a question I think everyone is going to have their own kind of experiences of, but I think it's important to get it from a graduate's point of view, not just kind of the average person who's already in the working world point of view.
I think, like, when it comes down to it, I think it truly is about who you know and not what you know. For example, when it came to working for the T's, that only happened for me because I knew someone. Being out of the master's degree, I thought I would have all of these networking opportunities, be able to go to all of the science communication events, or be able to go to a journalism open day and try things. And, like, suddenly we're in the middle of a pandemic, I'm stuck in my teenage bedroom having to decide what next steps I'm going to take. And yeah, it was just crazy. And it was only because I knew someone who worked at the T's at the time that I was really given that opportunity. And the same thing when it came to those placements, that happened because of who I knew. Because at the time, so many places were rejecting placements. Like the university had lined up were being rejected. They were saying, no, we can't take on people at the moment. And the same with a lot of sort of graduate schemes. There were graduate schemes that I wanted to apply for. One that I applied for was, for example, with the BBC, and I got through the first stage. But for example, if I'd have made it to the final stage, that all got cancelled because of the pandemic. And I couldn't even imagine having to be going into trying to find a full-time job during this time. Even just finding finding some sort of work to get me by, and any type of paid journalism work was difficult. And I'm forever grateful that I still have this bit of work to do at the moment, because for so many people it's so difficult. There's so many, for example, like Quart and BuzzFeed in the UK have all crumbled during the pandemic. Great media companies have all crumbled, and that means that the opportunities for graduates are just going down at the moment, which is a real shame.
Which I suppose leads us to the bit where it's really come to you to form your own kind of content and your own kind of events and your own opportunities, some of which you're going to talk to us a little bit about. And it sounds to me like that's out of necessity then, that you just like there is no opportunities, or do you think you would have been trying to make your own opportunities anyway, even if you got on the graduate schemes?
I'd say that even at the moment, I'm still trying to make my own opportunities, like each morning, like not on a Monday, but some other days, I'll try and pitch editors to get articles in places that aren't the T's, spend an hour in the morning doing that. Contacting anyone and everyone that I can to try and get an opportunity, like for example to get a radio piece commissioned, being part of, if there's any sort of opportunities like Eventbrite sessions and stuff, and how to pitch, or how to improve my audio editing skills, or taking like online courses or using YouTube videos to try and improve my craft. I'm always trying to do that bit to get to better myself and to try and make more contacts with people. It is more difficult now, but it doesn't mean that it's not doable.
And there is a chaotic nature of it as well, I suppose, trying to do it all online.
Yeah, I think that the pandemic has been a really difficult one, because it's in one breath, it's given me the onus to be more focused. I am stuck in my teenage bedroom. I am back at home. I can't go and socialise as much with my friends or whatever, and spend all of my money, and I'm stuck in this sort of box where I can technically should be able to focus myself to be able to get all of these things done, network, improve my skills, try and find a job or even a bit of freelance work. But when it comes to it, because of the pandemic, it's unbelievable the effect that it, for example, has on your mental health. And I'll be completely open in saying that I've got extremely bad anxiety. So I want to do everything all at once. And I'll try and do stuff for the T's. And if someone says to me, I've got this for you to do, I'll do it. I'll do it. Just please don't fight me. I'll do it. I'll do all the work everyone gives me. Then I also want to be part of every online event that I see. I want to pitch editors and try and get a commission, a real paid commission in a big magazine or a big newspaper, or I want to get into yoga or get more fit and all of these things. And I think that sometimes I need to tell myself to slow down, and that it's okay if I only get one or two things done in that one day. If that means that I only get to take 2 things off my list, at least I've done those little things, and that's an achievement, especially given the opportunity, especially given the the experience that we're having at the moment with the pandemic. If I only get those 2 things done in one day, I've still done something. It's still an achievement, even if it's only small.
Absolutely, and I wouldn't even say it's small. I think it's quite a big thing, because one of the things people listening may or may not realize is that when you're going down, a freelance, I suppose, career path, or setting up your own business, or any kind of variation of that, there's so much kind of anxiety at the start with trying to, because there's no structure, and you have to give yourself your own structure. And so many people who go down that freelance route will talk about how they feel like, I can never turn off, because I always have to feel like I should be doing more, I should be doing more, I should be doing more. And it's really great to hear you kind of at least taking a step back and going, well, I know I'm going through that. The pandemic makes it worse, and I'm going to take these steps to kind of give myself a bit of a break. And I don't really have a question with that. It's just something I think is positive.
Yeah, I just think that at the moment, I think that I always feel like I have to be doing everything. And I went from having that structure of university, having modules, and you just need to work towards this deadline with this essay, or you just need to get this package done within this amount of time, to having to create my own structure in order to build myself as a freelancer. And I always feel the pressure, especially because I see so many young journalists or people in the media profession that'll tweet and be like, I've got this commission, I've got 5 commissions, I've got doing this and doing that, and I've been taken on for this opportunity, or I've got this job role, or I'm going to be on shift for these people. And sometimes it can be so hard to get caught up in it and compare yourself to everybody else and be like, I need to be doing all of that. So you try to work 10 times harder, and the effect of burnout is 10 times as tough.
Yeah, so, I totally agree. It's good to see you aware of it, because that's I think the kind of first step of dealing with it, isn't it? You know, to be able to kind of cut yourself some slack and kind of be kind to yourself. And it's something that I continuously say is I think people need to be kinder to themselves, especially at the moment and everything going on. I wanted to before we come to the end of the show, highlight on a little bit more of the kind of, I suppose, the funnier side of the hecticness of it. And we know we talked about this off mic, because there is a networking kind of chaos at the moment in terms of like meeting people and for work and blah, blah, blah. And you and I had this realization at the start of the interview where we had no idea how we knew each other and how we've been in touch. And I just wanted to bring that up to kind of balance out the negative chaos that is going on at the moment. That there was almost a fun kind of we were in the middle of talking, we realized, how do we know each other? How did we get this interview sorted? And for me, I thought that it was a great source of hilarity, you know, kind of going, how did this start? And again, just something I wanted to highlight.
Yeah, I mean, it's so strange because I work with social media for like the job role that I do, but I'm not the most active person on social media. I'm kind of the person that lurks in the background. If someone's having a bit of a crisis, I'll give them words of encouragement and try to be nice. But like, yeah, I'm not the most active person. I don't really tweet out my thoughts or use Twitter sort of as a diary or to like tweet out my achievements and stuff. I'm quite a private person when it comes to stuff like that. I like celebrate in the background by myself or with my loved ones. But I think I tweeted out like a beginner, like one of the things I thought at the beginning of the new year was, right, I really struggle to share my knowledge with other people. I'm a bit of a gatekeeper. So I'm really stubborn, and like when I like know that I know something, I hate sharing it with other people. Like I just hate sharing it with other people. I'm going to be so honest, I hate it. Like I'm just like, I know how to edit audio and I'm not going to share it with anybody else. If you want to learn that, then you can pay to do it. So it's not really a New Year's resolution, but more I just thought, right, I'm going to be a bit nicer and I'm going to just do something to be a nice person. And I saw on Twitter and somebody had said, I really want to start a podcast this year. I want to know how to edit a podcast, but I don't know what I'm doing. And then I just found myself like, it was almost like an out of body experience. Like I wasn't thinking about it and I just automatically typed, I'll help and I'll do this thing. And then like, I think like that evening, over watching a bit of telly, watching some online murder documentaries, don't know why, again, all to do with the pandemic, I like knocked up this Eventbrite and decided to put on a beginners to radio and podcast event for people. And I think that's how we got in touch, because I'm not the biggest social media, you know, person. I reckon that was off the back of that.
I reckon it must be. That sounds like something I would reply to and have an opinion on which is a perfect time for you to plug said event, because that is coming up in just a few weeks' time.
So I've got a beginners to radio and podcast event going on in February, on February the 12th, which I think is a Friday at 7:00. And it's just to introduce you to like, what is the difference between radio and podcasting? Because I think that they're two different things. How you come across like coming up with a successful idea for a podcast, how you go from the beginnings of like producing it, writing a script, getting potential guests on, and then using Audacity to do basic editing. So I'm not going to talk people through how like to do, you know, like Adobe Audition or Pro Tools or anything, just basic stuff on Audacity, like how you can cut audio. That's the main bit, is to cut audio to get it to the right frequency for a listener's ear, and then how to get that onto platforms such as Spotify, Google Podcasts and Apple Podcasts, and to distribute it out to your listeners. And I also won't be doing any of, just to make it clear, because a lot of people ask this question. Sorry, Kian. A lot of people ask this question. They're like, how can I make money from a podcast? I don't make money from my own podcast, so I won't be going through it. You know, like I will touch upon maybe like what I've read about monetizing a podcast, but I haven't decided to monetize one myself.
And if you're interested in that, there'll be a link to that in the description, if that's okay with you, Sunita.
That'd be fantastic. Thank you so much for that, Kian. That's really helpful.
You're very welcome. And if people are on Twitter, is there any way they can follow you?
Yeah, I'm at Sunita Dastadar on Twitter.
Again, I'll put your handle in the description if that make life easier so people can read it. And just to finish up with today, because you've gone through a lot in your own kind of experiences with teaching, and then kind of coming out of teaching and still loving teaching but wanting to do something else and trying to build this kind of media career, and then the pandemic hitting and still trying to do all that, and then somehow ending up in this show and none of us knowing how you got there. There's been a lot of stuff has happened in the last couple of years for you, and you sound like you've handled it really well. You sound like you've really pushed yourself and at the same time try to be kind to yourself. And taking all of that in and thinking of the listeners to this show, what advice would you have for anyone who is either finished or coming to the end of their courses and kind of really thinking about what they want to do next?
I'd say the biggest piece of advice that I have for a lot of people is that it's not about what you know, it's about who you know. So make sure that you're trying to network. That might be over the internet. That might be saying yes to a Zoom coffee. That might be going to a Zoom event that you see. It could be spotting somebody's email and asking for a bit of advice. And for example, an editor or someone who is in the place that you want to be. Find out what their journey is. Maybe ask them how they got there, if need be. That's probably a second point, actually, is if you know where you want to be, look up that person, find out how they got there. That's how I decided to do the journalism course that I'm going to be studying, and decided where I would go, was because that I found out that the people who were where I want to be, that's what they did. So I decided to do that. Another thing is don't be afraid to reach out to people, even if you are a bit more on the introverted side. Don't be afraid to take that step. I know that it's easier said and done when you're a person like me who can talk someone's ear off, but I'd still say that it is worth it to do that. What's another thing is, don't be afraid to ask for things. I'd say when I was younger, I was a lot more afraid to ask for things. For example, this is a really silly example, but if they would give out free biscuits and stuff, if I went on a trip, I just wouldn't take them. If they said at the end, if you got any questions, I wouldn't be the one to ask any questions. I'd wait till somebody else would ask those questions. But now I'm the person that asks those questions. Always make sure that you're if you want to know something, just ask it. For example, I recently had an interview for a bursary to pay off the fees for my course, and thankfully I got the bursary. And at the end, they said to me, "Do you have any questions for us?" And I said, "Yes, I'm looking for work experience as part of my course. Can you help me out?" And now I have 3 different offers to gain work experience at 3 top companies. And I wouldn't have got it if I didn't ask the question.
Sunita, that is a beautiful way, I think, to end the show, because that is, I think that's really, really good. If you are interested in following Sunita on Twitter, the handle is in the description. Also, just as importantly, sorry, I should say, the Introduction to Podcasting event. That's not what you're calling it, is it? What did you call it again? Did you call it Introduction to Podcasting?
Beginners to Radio and Podcasting.
Beginners to Radio and Podcasting. My absolute apologies. The link to that is in the description as well. Thank you so much for joining us on Graduate Compass. If you want to help the show, as always, it'd be a massive help if you can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, TikTok. Yes, we're on TikTok. Or I know, fancy. I'm getting a look up Sunita there. It's a fancy one. Or you can share or just subscribe to the show. Or do you know what? Even just listening is a massive help. I'm trying to get the show out to as many people as possible, as many graduates as possible, as many students as possible who might benefit from it. In the meantime, I'm Cian O'Sullivan. Thanks for listening.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Graduate Compass. Remember, if there is a degree subject or specific industry you would like to be featured on any future episodes, then we would love to hear from you and know what you are trying to find out. Our email is info@graduatecompass.ie.